Hi, I'm Amanda Morrell with interest.co.nz, and I'm here today with a double shot interview with Michael Lang. He's the Chief Investment Officer for New Zealand Funds Management. And Michael's going to talk to us today about some KiwiSaver issues. New Zealand Funds Management is the first KiwiSaver scheme to just get itself qualitatively reviewed by a ratings agency called OneSec. Michael, can you tell me what is a qualitative review and how does it work?
Sure. Well, there's two kinds of reviews. There's a qualitative review and a quantitative review. And so we've just undergone a qualitative review, and that includes an analysis of the numbers. But importantly, a quantitative review will look at the level of returns that a KiwiSaver fund provides, and it also will have some measures in there that look at the risk that was taken to generate those returns, for example, standard deviation or drawdown. So it's terrific for looking at historic performance, but what it doesn't address is whether that is going to be a good indicator of what will happen in future years. And so a quantitative review looks backwards, a qualitative review looks forward. And it looks at things like how was that investment performance generated? Was there a key individual behind that performance? Is there systems and processes in place so that that level of performance is repeatable going forward? So it gives you an insight into the stability of the organisation and into the likelihood that it will be able to repeat the performance that it's generated in the past. So that's the key benefit of a qualitative review, and really you need both in combination to get a full picture as to what the right KiwiSaver scheme for you is.
So I understand that this is something that is standardly done over in Australia, that several superannuation schemes or fund managers have this review or ratings done amongst themselves, but it's not something that is done here in New Zealand. You're calling for this to be done with other KiwiSaver schemes, is that correct?
That's right, and I think what will happen, as has been the case with mutual funds in the States and retirement plans in Australia, is that it will become the norm to have both the numbers analysed and the investment process analysed. And so right now we might have been one of the later KiwiSaver funds to launch, because we spent a lot of time designing a purpose-built product for KiwiSaver. We didn't just convert one of our existing strategies across. So we're a bit slow to come to the market. But now that we're here, we're one of the first organisations, or the first organisation as I understand, to go through this qualitative review process. I think over the next 3 or 4 years, everyone will end up going through a combination of the quantitative and qualitative review process, and that will place the industry in 2 or 3 years' time in a much better position to determine who got lucky with their performance, and we've seen some examples of that, whose performance is sustainable, and what risks managers are taking to generate the sort of returns that they're advertising in the paper at the moment.
Okay. Increasingly, we've seen a bit of skepticism around rating agencies themselves. So can you tell me a bit more about OneSec, how they carry out these reviews, and how credible is their opinion at the end of the day?
Right, yep. Well, OneSec are the largest fund rating organisation in Australia, and they have just begun to cover New Zealand fund managers. They have been working for 15 years analysing investment funds, just in the same way that Moody's or Standard & Poor's provides rankings on corporate bonds and government bonds. And their audience is the subscribers, the people who use their research, and their research is specifically written for, not for the general public, mass market distribution, but their research is specifically produced for financial advisors. So it's very technical, it's very detailed, it's very thorough, very rigorous, and that maximises the chance that they will be able to identify weaknesses in the investment process, excessive risk taking, and things that financial advisors are familiar with, and they can then warn their clients that that KiwiSaver product might not be appropriate for them over the medium term.
Yeah, given the sort of technical nature of some of the information that they're gathering, General investors then therefore would not know how to interpret some of this analysis. Is it necessary to go through a financial advisor to actually get the interpretation around such a rating?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think there's two ways we can, New Zealand, KiwiSaver is still so new to New Zealanders. Australians have been doing it 10, 15 years longer than us, and Americans, of course, have had 401ks for 20, 30 years, so they've got their first generation of people who began their working life saving into these plans, and they're coming out the other side. And two things need to go hand in hand. The first is general population has to become more educated about financial matters. So financial literacy in New Zealand is a big issue, and as the industry grows, more time will be spent training everyday New Zealanders. But the other thing that we've observed in Australia and especially in America, where 401k plans for your average individual can be $1, $2, $3 million by the time they enter retirement, if they've been saving into it all their life, is that when you have significant lumps of capital and you have a very long-term commitment, then it is worth getting professional financial advice. So financial advisors are an integral part of maximising the benefit of compulsory retirement schemes, and definitely of optional retirement schemes in the more mature markets. And we think exactly the same thing will happen in New Zealand. People start off initially just doing it themselves, but as the sum gets bigger and bigger, they'll say, wow, this is a real meaningful amount after only 3 years, let alone after 5, 10, 15 or 20 years. And just as I would use a lawyer to create a trust for me, I wouldn't do it myself. And just as I rely on a tax advisor to do my tax return, I'll rely on a financial advisor, or I'll work with a financial advisor to optimise what I'm getting out of this 10, 15, 20-year commitment. So I think a lot more KiwiSavers will be done through financial advisors than has initially been the case in the first 1 or 2 years.
Okay. What are the conceivable ratings that you could get through one of the through OneSec?
Right. Well, our scheme had we have 3 different pie portfolios within our KiwiSaver plan, and we have a specially designed system that asset allocates between those 3 categories over your lifetime. And one of those portfolios achieved a 5 out of 5. There's 5 criteria. The top rating is highly recommended. So one of our portfolios got a highly recommended. The other 2 portfolios got the next category down, which is a recommended. Then there is investment grade, and then below that there are 2 lower categories that you wouldn't want to be in.
Okay,
I can't remember their exact
Fair
name,
enough. You're not in them, though.
No, we're not
Safe
in
to
them.
say. It's not a cheap process, I understand, to go through this ratings procedure. Is that, can you explain a bit how the cost structure works, and is this a cost that ultimately the KiwiSaver will end up bearing out as well?
No, I think, I mean, it is a very expensive process because it is so labour intensive, and the people who are doing it are experts in funds management analysis, so they are not, OneSec is not cheap, and the process is very rigorous. So they go through the company that manages the KiwiSaver, the balance sheet, the profitability, who the management are, who the ownership are, what the corporate strategy is, and then they go into risk management, who your settlement office, back office is, what counterparty risk an organisation has, downside protection. They go through the investment team and they rank all the individuals in the investment team. So it's a very long process. We've been working with OneSec for 6 months, and so it's very long and very expensive and very thorough. And we've got to do it every year. And once you're committed to the process, OneSec comes back once a year to go over all those issues again with you. So it is a significant hurdle for smaller boutique providers who may not be able to afford that. But for the larger KiwiSaver providers who we've seen are already profitable after such a short period of time, I think it's an essential cost rather than a discretionary cost, and that's some of the things that your fees should go towards providing. It's not just the management of the service, it's also providing good research so that you know whether what you're invested in is appropriate for your needs. There's some a question we often get is New Zealand Funds is the one paying OneSec for the research, so therefore OneSec's not independent. They're a related party, and there would be an incentive for them to put a good ranking on our portfolios as has occurred because we're the ones paying the fee, which is exactly the same as the criticism that was levelled against the big rating agencies globally, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, during the global financial crisis when structured credit in particular collapsed, and some of these tranches of structured credit had investment grade ratings from these big organisations. But if you think, on the surface that appears to be a concern, but if you think about it a little bit more, OneSec's an organisation that's providing research to over 100 different investment organisations in Australasia and around the world. And the only reason people subscribe to that research is because they feel that OneSec over the last 15 years has proven itself as a credible rating agency. And for that, they obviously generate a lot of revenue. And so for them to give a bad recommendation just for the fee from one fund manager and put at risk 100 or 200 or 300 other subscribers who might not renew, for them to put it at risk for the sake of one fund manager is economically a very poor decision. And so the economic incentive is actually for them to do the very best job that they can. Because that will mean the other financial advisors will continue to subscribe to their research, and the other investment organisations will want to have the OneSec brand associated with their products. So I think that the economic answer is the most logical answer to that.
All right, excellent. Michael Lang, Chief Investment Officer for New Zealand's Funds Management, and he's been talking to us about greater rigors for the KiwiSaver sector. Michael, thanks for joining us. I'm Amanda Morrell with interest.co.nz.